timing issues can be more fully examined. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Phil Goff.
Mr. Speaker, Labor intends to support this bill to a select committee, the Justice Committee, and I think it is a serious bill. I think its purpose is a very proper purpose, and to quote the bill, that is to provide greater transparency within the justice system and to avoid conflicts of interest by judges by requiring judges to make returns of their pecuniary interests. Mr. Speaker, I think we're generally very well served by the judiciary, and there have been very few accusations, allegations or even suspicions of corruption insofar as it affects the judiciary. But as my colleague Charles Chauvel pointed out earlier, conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest can resign, and in the Saxmere case that led, rightly or wrongly, to the resignation of Justice Bill Wilson. I think that the one concern that you would need to have is that whatever is done in this legislation preserves judicial independence. And I'm a huge believer in judicial independence, not so insofar as my former role as Minister of Justice, but my former role as Minister of Foreign Affairs. You could judge the quality of the rule of law in a country by the independence of the judiciary, and nothing ought to be done that would substantially or in any way undermine the principle of judicial independence. But I don't think that that is automatically the consequence of legislation of this nature. I await with interest the final report of the Law Commission, and I think it's going to be a real benefit to the Justice Select Committee to have that report, that final report, alongside the legislation when they look at it. It's not really a hugely radical move. I remember back in 1990, it was a Labor government that first applied the principle of having a register of pecuniary interests to the executive. And there are all sorts of things said about that and how undesirable it might be. But actually, Mr. Speaker, that's turned out to be, I think, a strong move in the right direction, helping New Zealand preserve the very proud record that we have through Transparency International as being regarded as first equal in the countries that have the least corrupt systems in the world. In fact, the pecuniary register for the executive has worked so well that, again under a Labor government, since 2006, that has applied to all members of Parliament. And I don't think that there are any members of Parliament here that think that we've been hard done by because we have to register our pecuniary interests. I think it is a protection for members of Parliament, and it's a protection and a guarantee for the integrity of the system, and I could see it having a similar impact insofar as it related to the judiciary. It's important to note that this doesn't, while the judges would have to set out areas where they had pecuniary interests, it doesn't extend to the actual value or the amount, so that privacy interests are protected in that way. Mr. Speaker, when the Law Commission looked at this issue, its preliminary view was that the existing law relating to recusal for financial interests by a judge was adequate, rather than any new law being needed. However, the Commission also noted this, and I want to again quote from the Law Commission: "There is a value in transparency because it increases public confidence in the integrity of public officials, deters conflicts of interest from arising, ensures standards of conduct and integrity remain high, and enhances accountability." End quote. I think in a sentence, sir, that sets out the justification and the arguments for a register of pecuniary interests. Mr. Speaker, I am aware also that comparable regimes such as the United Kingdom, Australia and Canada don't have it, but the United States does have it, and they've had it since 1978. And if I can finish with this quote from a very conservative Chief Justice, William Rehnquist, actually appointed under the Nixon administration, he said this of the American system in the year 2000, quote, "There are legitimate purposes served by the Act. Among them is to expose the judges' financial holdings to public scrutiny which assists judges in avoiding conflicts of interest. And then he goes on a little later saying, few would argue that there is no need to publicise a list of judges' holdings for conflicts purposes. To end on another Justice of the Supreme Court,
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Thank you, sir.
I call Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill clearly raises important